and welcome to the next episode of the Live Your Spa Life show. Spa life is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. The Spa and Spa Life, the SPA, is for Seek Power Always, to stand in the power that you are here to do. I am so thrilled to introduce to you not only my special guest, but dear long-term friend, partner in crime, and many, many adventures. You will get to know that as part of our conversation. Leah Grant elevates consciousness as a master certified coach, a metaphysics teacher, a multi-published author, a certified master clairvoyant, and a certified medical intuitive. She has an amazing array of things, and we're going to show you how all those things actually pull together, because she's also the creator of Ecstatic Meditation, writes chic lit novels, and her clients span from high-level financial advisors to small business owners and authors. She inspires people to be their multidimensional selves in all areas of their life. Leah, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. So excited to finally be here.
Well, we've talked about this for years now, and finally your worlds kind of collided together and really started happening, right? And so now it's very different, because I know one of the things, especially once I read all the things that are happening and just started talking about what you're doing, I know that with all the many, many things that you do, how do people know if you can help them?
I think it's intuitively at this point. I will meet people and they will literally say to me, I know you're supposed to help me, and I don't even know how. And usually a short conversation, we will figure out very quickly how I can help them, whether it's in business, whether it's with their spiritual development, whether it's really just an overall pulling their life together in a way that makes them really excited about living.
Right. This is one of the things I love about you, is that, you work with like some pretty high level financial advisors, and we would not necessarily connect them with. And I remember back in the day, there would be that hesitation of, do you share your spiritual life with them and the intuitive gifts that you did? And I remember when, I started coaching and I connected with you about, how am I going to know what direction to go with my clients? And you really supported me in tapping into my own knowingness and intuition. I think it's such an important aspect for people to know that you don't have to know all of it. You just need to be able to listen, tap into, and move forward with it. And I know that this is part of how you consciously create your life, and it has to do with your outlook. So I'd love for you to share more about what your outlook is, and, how does this affect not only your personal life, but your business?
Sure. I really look at life as an adventure, and that everything is experiential. So whether an experience is bad or good doesn't usually relate to me on that level. I can certainly say, wow, that would have been nicer had it been more fun. But I always look at it as being something that can add to who I am and who I will be in the future. So even when there's things that you're just like, oh my gosh, like, why did I have to experience that? I can look at it as a growth opportunity, or as something that allows me to help my clients in the future.
Yeah, no, I love that, because, we are these multidimensional beings, and we are in different places in our life for different things. I mean, I've been a client of yours, you've been a client of mine. There's been different aspects of how we weave in our life and what that looks like. And I love how we both look at, the world in terms of how we are choosing and being conscious about that. And, you talk about maintaining your centeredness, that regardless of what's happening outside of you, that you can really show up how you want to show up and not be swayed so much with what's happening in the outside world.
Absolutely. And that's something that I've been teaching my clients a lot right now, because there's a lot going on in the world that people don't like what it looks like. And a lot of that, I think, is they don't understand that we're in the middle of a process, that the middle of chaos is messy. The beginning of chaos looks kind of neat and pretty, and the end of chaos looks neat and pretty. But the middle of it is when everything gets mucked up and everything kind of feels crazy and nobody knows where their grounding is, because they've defined themselves from external things. How much money I'm making, what kind of cars do I have, how's my political party doing, how's my sports team doing. And when you define yourself by those outside things, when the outside things are unstable, you feel unstable. So you want to learn how to define yourself from a different reference point. And I always talk to people about finding that reference point as being that center within them, or that spark of God, or that piece of themselves that's actually their consciousness. And that's when we align with our consciousness, which is actually an immortal piece of ourselves, we have access to so much more in terms of strength and faith and surrender and power that people can even imagine.
Right. So how is it that you are actually showing some of that realization and that knowingness with clients who tend to be very linear, who don't necessarily look at it, the totality of that? So how are you actually working with people?
Well, with my clients who are more linear, they're going to look at a little bit different perspective. I get into their world and ask them, what is it that helps them to make decisions? Sometimes it's having logic, but a lot of them actually use their gut instinct. And what they don't recognize is that their gut is actually tapping into that inner power. They just have never related it to that. So it's sort of teaching them, like, you actually have these skill sets. You're actually using them already. You're just not calling them, some of the woo-woo or foo-foo names that you may have been shying away from speaking about them as.
Yeah, I love that distinction. I was talking with another guest about, the difference between knowledge and knowing. Mm-hmm. And so many times on our career paths, we have all these, learning and knowledge and all these things that happen, but we don't always check it in with our knowing and how it actually applies to us and where it's going to take us and what we're going to do. And I think part of that journey too is looking at what are some of the things that have disempowered us in our life, and then what are some of the things that have, how to stand in our power. And I'd love for you to share some of that, because I think it's important. Like, people, anybody can Google you and see that you're a successful woman on many layers, and that, you were there in the beginning of the coaching industry, and with a lot of the founding people. And so you've seen a lot of iterations of things happen with that. What would you say are some of the things that, along the way have made you feel disempowered? And then where did you come back around and stand in your power?
Yeah. So for me, the hardest thing has been my physical health, and being disempowered by feeling like when I had one of those mystery illnesses, right? That they call, oh, you have an autoimmune disorder, whatever that means. And they give you no options for how to treat it, really, besides just throw a bunch of prescription medicines at you that don't make you feel better. In fact, for me, they made me feel worse. And so I felt really disempowered by not having somebody who was supposed to be the expert give me any advice, and not having the knowledge, or not thinking initially that I had the knowledge myself to heal myself, and just thinking, well, I'm stuck with this, whatever it is. And I pulled out of that, actually, with a lot of your help. We went on the green drink fast, and we started looking into a lot more really deep alternative things that would help me to take my power back with regards to my health. And that was really an interesting journey, because I've been really good about not letting the ups and downs of business disempower me, which I know that affects a lot of my clients. If they have a lot of clients, they're like, oh, I'm great. And if they don't have a lot, then they're feeling down. And for me, I was able to ride those waves. And it was the health wave that just, smacked me upside the head and made me really have to go, okay, how do I pull my own power back here and take control of my own health?
Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of people can relate to that. I mean, you and I have, studied in the 9 environments, and, a lot of times people be really strong in one area, and then there's the area that tends to take them out. And so when you look at the totality of how that affects your life and what that looks like, I love that you keep your perspective in all of it. So with some of that, where have been some of the areas that you have felt empowered?
I really kind of feel empowered in a lot of areas of my life. And I think part of it is because I look at it as a game. If I choose to play a certain way, then I can set the rules. I can set, what the goals are. I can set how you win. So if I want to win, I just set myself up to win. And I think empowerment for people individually is about really just figuring out what your values are and then living to those values in a way that's fun and playful.
I love it. Especially this time of year, in the beginning of year, everyone's making resolutions and all these, things. Everybody's filling themselves at the gym for the month of January. And, we all know that usually those last for about 72 hours. And there has to be something deeper around that. And so I love that, you and I talk a lot about our values and what do we want to experience and what is the intention that we want to have moving forward. And I think that's such a powerful way to stand in your power, is to be clear what is the kind of life you want to have, and to not have it be so serious, right? I mean, what are some of the adventures and things that happen? And I mean, God only knows, you and I have been on quite a few adventures. We had one year in particularly where we just decided to be like this rogue gypsies, where we were just on the road and just decided to go with wherever life took us. And we had some amazing adventures that year as part of it, which people I'm sure thought was crazy and insane. What do you think was like one of the biggest things that you took away from that experience?
That you don't have to plan everything. So I was a huge planner before I took that 18 months and was on the road. And for those people who don't really understand what we did, we literally put everything in storage and got in the car and just sort of drove where we were taken. And it's funny, you mentioned earlier my financial advisory clients, I didn't tell them I was doing it. So I maintained my practice, my 6-figure business on the road. And they had no idea that I had no home, right? That I was essentially homeless and traveling around, being guided by spirit, really, to what is the next place to go? What is the next adventure to go on? Or we get inspired. Like, remember when we were just like, I think we should go to Disneyland this week. And we like drove to Disneyland, right? So it was really very much about surrendering into like, what are the opportunities that are coming up? What are the possibilities? And then listening to that little tiny inner voice. That's how Ecstatic Meditation was born. It was born out of those 18 months on the road, not because I said, oh, I think I want to create Ecstatic Meditation, but because I was listening to that little voice and it said, go to Ojai. And I'm like, why am I going to Ojai? And I went to Ojai and I'm walking around and there was a sign on a door that said free song, like come in and we'll teach you how to sing into a microphone, basically was what it was. I can't remember the exact name of it. And I thought, okay, I'll do that. And I went in and it was only me. Like the guy said, usually there's like 5 or 6 people that show up for this, but today it's just you. So he and I started making music together and he ended up being the musician and the editor and everything on the album. And it came about so organically, but just because I'd listened to that little tiny voice that said, go to Ojai.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that definitely was a time where I started really listening and tuning into, what my inner voices were. And I remember that time when we were both coaching clients and we had to kind of work out our timing as if one of us had needed to be in the car to talk to a client. And I can remember, a lot of times I was considered a little bit more of the no filter coach. And I remember Leahs, being nearby and stuff going, you can't say that.
Well, yeah. So I'm ICF certified trained and I teach new coaches, right? And so their whole thing in the ICF is that you don't tell clients anything. So it's you're evoking the response from them. But your coach training came from another school. And so, I mean, what you said to her was so on point, but it was also just like, okay, that was the dagger that she needed right in that moment, right?
Oh my gosh, so fun. So many different adventures we've had. We won't even get into Costa Rica because that's like a whole nother galaxy of experiences that's happened for sure.
Exactly. Or the dark desert highway to Arizona. We'll leave that one out too.
There might have been some kidnapping involved.
I was not going to mention that on camera.
You may have to when you're with one of us separately, we'll gladly share the story. So we'll go from that point for sure. So, needless to say, we are both disruptors and like to consider ourselves positive disruptors and make, shifts and changes in the world. One of the things, we've talked a little bit here about how you've, you come from a very spiritual world and a very financial world, and your clients are now, molding together. And it's one of the reasons why you delayed the upgrade to your website. And I know we'll tell people about that here shortly as well, because it's so beautifully done and such an embodiment of who you are. Talk about your courage to bring all of those things together and what that journey was like for you.
Yeah, that was huge. So I've been working in the personal development and coaching industry for about over 20 years. And I was very compartmentalized in it. So I had my financial services clients, I had my small business clients, and then I had this whole spiritual piece, which is where I was doing spiritual mentoring and the ecstatic meditation. And then I had, where I'm writing chick lit novels, like here's my little thing, under a pseudonym, right? And a very different pseudonym. It's now partly my name, but, and I had a pseudonym for each of those. Like I was literally doing them as separate businesses under separate names so that, there wouldn't be any cross-pollination, because I wasn't sure how each group would respond to the other. And after a lot of really kind of deep soul searching and really looking at the fact that like I'm a multidimensional being and I am all of these things. I'm the woman who writes the like kind of edgy, sexy romance novels. And I can have this high level business conversation with somebody making $100 million a year. And like, I'm equally as good at both of those things. And so why should I have to give up one piece of myself when I'm in either of those worlds? Or in the spiritual world, why should I have to be afraid of saying like, hey, yeah, I make a lot of money and I like making a lot of money. And that doesn't make me less spiritual. Yeah. And so it came to this point where I said, I'm putting all of this together in one place. And it took 11 months to rebrand myself. It was really a journey of finding the right people to help me. I went through 3 different website development companies, and I had 2 different photographers, one that took some kind of, playful, fun desert pictures of me, and one that took some very professional, in like kind of a woodsy setting photos of me. And then I used my artistic ability, because I'm also an artist, and I used that to really bring all of that together in one place and share all of me. And my encouragement in doing that is also to inspire others to own all of the different parts of themselves: light, dark, fun, not fun. We're so programmed in society today to like be one thing, be an expert, be this, do just this one thing and do it well. And that has really killed people's spirit. It's killed people's creativity. And so I want to reignite that in people.
I love that. One of the things I'd love to hear like some distinction on, because I can hear, just in the heads, it's, blowing some circus for some people, because right. There's so much marketing around, stay in your lane, do what you're best at, delegate the rest. I mean, all the different things that come up in and around that. And we're not saying necessarily to do things that aren't associated in some way. What would you say is, because I look at things in many different dimensions as well, I see the through line of this for you. Like this is, it's all you, and it's not you not being in your lane. And I think that there's a distinction between having representations of aspects of you but doing randomness that maybe doesn't apply to what it is that you're doing. What would you say would be the through line in all the different aspects of you?
For me, it's really living as a multidimensional immortal consciousness. And that might be a lot of big, giant $11 words to say. But what that means to me is that I'm just emanating my full self out. And at any given moment, what my full self wants to express may look very aligned with what I've done in the past, or it may not. My financial advisor clients may not see the relationship of the ecstatic meditation to them, but maybe that's because that part of myself isn't meant for them. that I think that the emanation of our self out, if it's in alignment with who you are and the energy and the vibration of you, it will be received by the people who need it. I'm not here to serve everybody. Every single one of my products isn't here to serve everybody. But the people who need that particular item find it, and it resonates with them.
Right.
And the other piece is, I'm not so focused on like building myself out as a certain thing that I probably have left some money on the table because I'm not following everybody else's formula. Mm-hmm. And
right.
I'm actually okay with that because everybody else's formula isn't an emanation of me.
Right. Right. I think that's so important for listeners to hear, is that just because you hear all these, successful ways that people are doing things, it may not be your way. And I love the aspect of really, listening in. I mean, one of the things I'm looking as one of my intentions this year is I lead with light, and really like listening to what that is and coming from that place. And, when we're fully authentically being ourselves, we're going to draw different people that need certain aspects of who we're being and what that is. And that may show up completely differently for other people. I mean, at first, and you and I have had a lot of conversations, it used to really throw me off if someone would come for me to help organize their life, and then for someone else, for me to be their spiritual advisor. It was like, well, how do those things work together and what that is? And you've beautifully been an example of that, of showing how that can seamlessly happen. And you're so intentional about the things that you are about. In fact, one of the things I always like to ask my guests, and I love because I've been in your space, but one of the things I like to ask is, we have a different experience of our bedroom versus our office versus our kitchen. What is your favorite room in your home and why?
My favorite room in my home is the one I'm in right now, which I have a townhouse and it's sort of set up like a loft. The top floor, which I'm in now, has a big vaulted ceiling, but this room actually contains like my living room, my meditation space, my altar, my office, and my kitchen's kind of off that, so I've got sustenance if I need it quickly. But I love this room because it's got tons of light. Like you see all the natural light coming in from this side, and even though I'm in a townhouse community, I happen to look out over an empty lot with trees and all this kind of stuff in it. So I have this sense that although I'm in the city, I'm closer to nature than I would normally be.
Yeah. Of course, you have a space that, talks to the different aspects of yourself.
Right. It's not one room, it's many rooms.
Right. All together. Big surprise with that. So speaking of which, what kind of exciting things are you offering in 2020?
So this has been an interesting year for me because I had this idea that I was going to do this and this and this. And I woke up on New Year's Day to do my meditation, to really sit down and do my planning. And I got this message. It was like, this is going to be a year that surprises the heck out of you. Oh. And so go back into that space that we were in when we were doing those travels and listen for the tiny voice that comes up of what's going on. Mm-hmm. So I have, for the first time, I have always had virtual assistants, always. And but in the last year, I got up to the point where I had 5 different virtual assistants. And I thought, I think it might be time to hire a full-time person at this point. So she started on Friday. And so now I have a full-time assistant, and it's actually, I can tell it's going to change my world because there's so much stuff that she's going to take off my plate to free me up to do a lot more creative things.
Oh,
my
so great.
Soul wants to do another ecstatic meditation this year. That's one of the things that wants to happen. I am publishing 2 of my fiction novels this year. Falling in Snow is set to come out on February 11th. And I haven't picked a date for Misconceptions yet. That's the second one. And then I'm writing a book about multidimensionality, which is flowing at its own pace.
I think it's been trickling for years.
Well, it started out as a book on invisible influencers, which I still have the material for, but it doesn't want to come out yet, which I think is very interesting because, invisible influencers are things like entities and angels and the energetic frequencies that actually influence our lives that a lot of people aren't even aware of. And I think because people aren't yet very aware of them, it's not ready to come out yet. So that will come soon, but not yet. But the multidimensionality is the piece that people are really interested in. What is 3D? What is 4D? What is 5D? You know, people think we're moving into 5D. We've actually just moved completely into 4D. And what does that mean? And so that's really what the book is going to be about. And Hay House is interested in it. So it's possibly not going to be out for another couple of years, because if I self-published it, I could get it out there like that. But if they want it, it'll be an 18-month process. So.
How fun. Well,
yeah.
I can't wait to hear more of the unfolding of that as that happens.
Thank you.
I know a lot of things, we look at the multi-dimensional aspects. Some people may be surprised because you and I, you know, planning is definitely one of the tools that really helps propel us to do the things that we want to do. And you happen to have 3 calendars, and I would love for you to talk about that, because some people have a hard time maintaining one. Please explain a little bit about why you have that and how it actually brings more peace and calm in your life.
Absolutely. So every year I do like a big wall calendar, and that lets me see the big picture. And I want spaces, you know, spa life is something that's still also part of my thing. I want to be able to take at least a 2-week international trip every year. That's like been my thing. And I've done it every year since I set out to do it. And I never always know what it's going to be. Last year I went to England and Avalon and did the whole high priestess thing, which was really fun. The year before that it was Greece. This year it might be Portugal. I'm not sure. But it's always something that sort of comes up and it's perfect, right? And so, but I'd like to see where that could possibly fit on the calendar. So sometimes it goes in the calendar first. Sometimes it fits in around the other things that are happening. And so that calendar is always just for big picture. Like, what do I want each month to kind of play out as? What do I already have in that month? Whether it's, you know, being a guest on a telesummit or launching a book, you know, I want to keep that whole week in February open so that I can really be present to launching the book. And then I have a paper calendar, which actually happens to match my scarf this year.
Hey.
And what this one is for me to do monthly planning. So I really set out and I do like my monthly plans on each of these. And this is also where I track my little to-do items. So this has a daily calendar in it as well. So if there's things that I must do in a certain day, it goes in that. And that's usually like make a phone call or do a lead follow-up or something of that nature. You know, where somebody says, well, can you call me in 2 weeks? That's the book I put it in. And then I have my Google Calendar, and that's for actual day-to-day appointments. If it's in the Google Calendar, I'm meeting with you. If it's not, probably not going to happen. So,
right.
Yeah.
And that can be overwhelming for some people, right? Thinking of all of that. But, you know, that actually allows you not only to consider what's important to you and what to do, but to actually have it flow into the next thing.
Yeah, to me, they're resource tools. I mean, it's like a funneling down. You've got the big one, and then you've got the weekly, daily, and then you've got the actual hourly, which is in the Google Calendar. Right. And it helps because I can see when trips are. I can do it for planning on that level. I can do it for, you know, my assistant now. It's like, okay, I need you to be here this day, not here this day, that type of thing.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I highly recommend that everyone has a big picture year-long calendar. I know that's one of the things that, you know, a lot of people don't have. I actually required it of my clients because it's something that really actually allows you to be in choice, to see where are you having the gaps, where are you having too much happening, where is it that you can actually have room for life to expand. And, you know, if you look at your calendar and you don't have something that is exciting to you, then, you know, you have a whole year to create that. And you don't even necessarily need to know the specifics. That's one of the things I love about, you know, what we do as far as being able just, you know, earmark it, right? Just put the space in there, and who knows what's going to show up in that space. It doesn't have to be rigid, but it allows you to see where is that flow going to be. And if you say something that you value, but it's nowhere on there, how much do you really value it?
Right. And that's the other thing, is that you can use these tools to look back I like to go through my, which I didn't do it this year, but I usually go through my weekly, daily one at the end of the year and look at like, where did I really spend my time?
Right.
Like, what did I really do this year? And I had a phenomenal year last year. And so I looked at like what made it phenomenal in terms of, you know, budgeting and revenue and clients and the work that I took on. And so how do I want to repeat that, you know, to have great results this year as well?
Yeah. What would you say in having that review? What were a couple things that you were like, wow, these were really successful principles or things that really supported me in having a phenomenal year?
Diversification for me. And that just is more from the standpoint of what keeps me excited and jazzed up is doing different things. So I have different streams of revenue. I have different client types. I have different things I'm offering. I teach, I, you know, have products, I write, I coach, I train. And I had a great, excellent mix of all of those last year. You know, I spoke in Canada. I trained for 3 different schools. And so all of that pulled together, then at the end, you're like, oh, wow, look what I made off that. How cool was that? You know?
Right.
And at the same time, I wasn't even feeling like I was in this state of work. Now, I will say the other thing I looked at was like, hey, I had very little time off last year. You know, I did go on my international vacation, but I didn't do my women's retreat last year. I usually go on at least one retreat with my girlfriends or something for a 3-day weekend. And I was like, wait, that was missing out of last year. And then some other social type things were missing out of last year. And so really this year, my intention is to have a bit more balance in that, so that even though I enjoy and love the things I'm doing, that I actually connect with my friends a bit more this year.
Right. I love that for the perspective. And, you know, for our listeners, you know, it's so important to not only look forward, but also look back and see, what do you want more of? What do you want to have less of? And also, this is part of knowing your own values and what's important to you and what actually jazzes and excites you about your life, because then you can put more of that in there. You know, if you look back and go, wow, that was a boring year. Well, what can you shift, right? What can you change? How can it be more exciting? And you only can do that if you know what are your values, what are the experience that you want to have, and how you can move forward with that. So, Leah, you are such a great example of that. And I know that our listeners are going to want to stay in contact with you. How can they best do that?
I would really invite them to go to my new beautiful website that I'm very, very proud of, is at Leah, Leah Grant.com. And jump on my list. You can jump on any one of them to stay in touch with me. You can get a free meditation if you go to the meditation page. You can get a free chapter of my book if you go to the fiction page, or if you go to the main page, you're going to get my time blocking hack tool that I share with you all on how to actually organize your small business in a way that you can get more done with less effort.
Oh, that is so great. Well, I just want to thank you for your wisdom and your friendship and just being as, you know, fun ventures that we get to have together. Is there any final thoughts for our listeners?
What I really like to convey to people is decide and choose, because if you don't choose, life will choose for you. And sometimes that's awesome. And other times it's not. And so if you're the type of person that wants that sort of surprise and wants life to keep moving forward, choose at least a direction or a path, and then set the intention to be led on that, you know, or really decide what you want to do and put in the commitment to do it. But there's not a right or wrong. And even if you decide, I want to have a boring year this year, like last year was too intense, there was too much going on, I want a boring year, like that's okay too, right? Every year doesn't need to be like off the charts crazy, like I have so much to report. You could just say, I want a year where like I spend most of my time sitting on the couch watching Netflix. Great, like that's your year. But realize what kind of impact that's going to have if you want to then ramp up the next year.
Right. It's so important to just look at, you know, we know that there's a cause and effect, right, about how we want to expand and what we want to do, and what areas, and maybe it's not all across the board. Maybe you want to ramp down in certain areas and ramp up in others, but knowing that it's choice. And I love how you're bringing this multi-dimensional part to that. So with that, I thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me as a guest. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, talk about choice. We are so thrilled that you are choosing to spend your most precious resource, your time, here with us. It is only when we do like rate and review that it actually expands it to get out there. So that's how you can support us, is we would love your 5-star ratings and to put in your review. Listen to other podcasts in here, and we'd love to have your comments where you could put tag both Leah and myself, ask any questions that you may have, because this is how we build community and this is how we support each other. So we would love to have your input there. So please rate and review. And until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.